to today's, I think Getan has called it the keynote that I'm very humbled to deliver as part of Startup Scale-Up Summit. So I'm sure all of you have heard a number of amazing speakers so far talking about a range of topics from mindset, scaling a business, starting a business. And, what an amazing time this is to actually have a summit, because I don't know how you've personally found it, but this year has been so interesting for me that even as a high performance coach, and funny enough, today's workshop is going to be about how to have a high performance mindset, or how to have the mindset to achieve high performance in your business. And it's such an interesting time because even as a coach for myself, I've had to take a step back and really walk my talk more so than any other year I've done, because this year it's thrown all sorts at us. And I remember I was at a membership club at the beginning of this year with my partner, and we were planning our goals for the year. And I'm sure you've done that. You were planning your goals for the year thinking 2020, I want to achieve this, I want to do this, I want to be this. And lo and behold, the powers that be were probably laughing at us thinking, these guys are planning their goals. They have no idea how the year is going to go. They've got no idea what's going to be in store for them. And lo and behold, it's been one of those years where we've had to do the very best that we can. So for today's workshop on the mindset for high performance, what I really want to do is focus on a couple of mindsets and things you can do right now that are simple, but also a little bit different to just, the typical whatever you focus on, you steer towards and change your thinking and all of that stuff. I want to focus on something that can allow you to perform your best in your business, in your life, across the board. Like, although this will sound like business, we're talking across the board for performance. Because what's the point in having performance and the mindset if you're only thriving in one aspect of your life and business and things aren't as high flying as the other areas? So we'll dive into that shortly. What I wanted to do to kick us off is to say, if you have any questions at all about the content I'm sharing, any questions, any thoughts, anything you want to share with me, please do comment in the chat below. You've got a chat box, very welcome to use it. Please do take advantage of that as well. And while I'm here for the next 30 minutes, where you get to see me, unfortunately, I can't see you. I'd love to see who's listening in, but you're very welcome to submit questions. So to kick us off, without further ado, and you can see my name, I'm Raghav Parkash, and my passion is high performance. So to start today talking about what I think could make the biggest difference to you right now, like if I was coaching a client one-to-one, I was thinking, what could I share right now that's going to make the biggest impact for you, your business, and everything across the board, is the mindset of uncertainty. So point number one I want to kick off with is, and in short, it's embracing uncertainty. Now, the more I look into this concept of uncertainty, the more I listen to experts, I think there's a narrative that says, you can feel more certain. If you're feeling uncertain, here's how to go from uncertainty to certainty. And we live in a world where people think certainty is the thing you should have. Certainty is what you should get to. Certainty is what you need to create, what you need to have. And if you're not feeling certain, then wow, there's something wrong. You need to go from uncertainty to certainty. Now, here's a slight problem about that. How much certainty have we had this year? Not much. How much certainty have we had before COVID? Now, there might be familiarity as to, sure, things are less disrupted. But what I know about my own experience of life is, as an entrepreneur, I've never ever had certainty. Yet, despite the lack of certainty, I've been able to thrive. I've been able to grow my business. I've been able to coach the clients that I'm very privileged to coach. I'm humbled to be part of this summit with you and the amazing work Getan has done. If you're listening, Getan, incredible work with the speakers you pulled together. And this is all through uncertainty. So a question I want to just start us off with is, what would happen if you never needed certainty? Now, I mean this loosely, not in the sense of just go crazy and take all these risks and be uncalculated, but I'm talking about certainty, meaning I need to know what's going to come next. I need to see what's going to happen next. I need to know how things are going to unfold. Because unless you see something I don't, I never felt like I've had certainty before. I've never felt like I've had certainty in my life. And through my life, I've constantly gone through one moment to the next, thinking I need certainty, not having it, but still making it through and doing pretty well. And I'm sure that's the same with you. That there's so many points in your life that you've navigated such difficult situations and you've performed at your best, but through the unknown. Because what a lot of people don't see with uncertainty is actually that's the norm. Uncertainty, in my opinion, is the default. Yet we think we have certainty over stuff, yet we don't have certainty. I think certainty is made up. I don't think we can ever get certainty for sure. Like, okay, there's familiarity. Like, I'm familiar in my environment. I'm familiar with my clients. I have a sense of, I know what might happen, but I don't have certainty. There's the difference. There's a distinction we can create. Familiarity versus certainty. Familiarity is, yeah, I'm familiar with something. I'm familiar with my environment. I'm familiar with my other half. Certainty is knowing how things are going to go. And as human beings, that's not our ability. You know, we can't predict the lottery. We can't see what's going to happen. What we're really good at, and this is where I want to kick us off, I'm going to share just 2 points today and keep it nice and simple. Point number 1 is the mindset of uncertainty. We'll start with that, which is embracing uncertainty. Not seeing certainty as the thing to go to. Not seeing uncertainty as bad, because we make up uncertainty is bad, certainty is good. So when we then have uncertainty, we think, I'm doing something wrong. I'm broken. My mindset's wrong. I need to fix this. I need to get to certainty. Well, no, because uncertainty is a norm. It's how you can grow businesses through the uncertain. You can create families through the uncertain. You can experience love, passion, success through the uncertain. Because the uncertain is what we do, but we don't realize we do it. Uncertainty is how we live our life. We play with uncertainty, yet we think we do it with certainty. We're always good at building our life as we go along. We're always good at dealing with things as they come up because we have an ability to do that, whether you call it intuition, whether you call it entrepreneur's instinct. You know, it's like Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. I'm a big fan of Reid Hoffman and I like what he represents. And he says, an entrepreneur is someone that would jump off a cliff and build a plane on the way down. Just think about that for a second. Does that sound like you? Does that remind you of how things have been with your family? If you've had a family, if you've got kids, has it always been certain? Or have you had to just make things up as you go along? Let's talk about your career. Before you went into business, if you've been one of those people that's always just had your own business, you know, gone from one to the other, then I envy you a little bit. I think that's amazing. But like me, I started in a career. How much certainty did I have? I don't have certainty. Yet what I felt I did was jump off a cliff and build my plane on the way down. When I became a coach from an Asian environment, trust me, that wasn't the cool thing to do. My parents were like, oh, Rag, you're going to be a life coach. I know exactly what that is. You're going to be a performance coach. Congratulations. It was like the opposite. You know, I share this joke at seminars that some of my family, when they heard I was going to be a life coach, they didn't realize what that was. And they thought it was being a lifeguard. So they thought I'm the guy that sits on beaches and, you know, jumps in and saves people. And you know, it's funny, but through the unknown, I created my business. Yet you see, and where performance comes in, is if we think uncertainty is the problem, whenever we're in uncertainty, we'll try and change uncertainty. But when you realize uncertainty isn't the problem anymore, when you realize that actually uncertainty in the unknown, although it looks scary, although it looks like we don't know what's going to come next, in those moments when we have our back against the wall is when we start to perform our best. Because what will happen is as we go through one moment to the next, we're then able to work with things as they're happening. You see, how we handle uncertainty isn't by thinking about the future, it's navigating what's coming up in the present. Just in the same way, a sailor will only sail based on the waves they're currently experiencing, not the waves to come. Maybe I'm making that up. As you can tell, I'm not a sailor. I might use some analogies that are off. But in the same way, a trader might use estimates of what's going to come up, but they'll trade based on the data they're getting now. A surfer will only surf the waves they're currently experiencing. A tennis player will only hit the shots that are in front of him now. You see, when you look at sport at any high level, when you look at performance, art, creativity, dance, opera, anything you're inspired by, cooking, performance comes through when we get stuck into what is happening in front of us right now. And in our business, you can imagine how powerful that is. Like, yeah, when it makes sense to plan, when it makes sense to think about the things that are going to come up, if we have some intelligence telling us that the market's going to dip, great, we can act on that. But that intelligence is happening now. We're working with data now that says this is going to happen. We're not working with future data. That the way we navigate uncertainty is by grounding ourselves and realizing uncertainty can be our friend. Uncertainty is where our greatest creations have come through. Uncertainty is where everything is, every idea, every form of genius is born. I remember there's a story about Pablo Picasso. I don't need to say who he is. You guys know Picasso. In case you don't, he's the artist. And there was a famous story about how Picasso loved uncertainty. He thrived on uncertainty because what he realized is when he knew what might come next, great, he was working on it. But the unknown is where often he had the best ideas. It was in the darkness he realized, wait a minute, I'm about to get my best idea right now. And then an idea would come through and he'd work on it and he would then navigate the challenge. And then he would go through another period of uncertainty. Because uncertainty is just like day and night. It's like the stock market. You'll have waves, and our job is to ride the waves. It's not to get rid of the waves. It's not to always be certain. Because look, I know I'm going to maybe just put this out there. It's a little bit controversial. There's experts that say you should have certainty. I think it's nonsense. Like, I've never had certainty. You can try and feel certain thinking, yes, I know what's going to happen next. But it's just a false illusion of control. And the most successful entrepreneurs, like Richard Branson, what does he say? Screw it, let's do it. So when you see an opportunity, say yes and figure it out. Figure out how to do it. Elon Musk, I heard this story of when he sold one business. He sold it for millions, hundreds, 150, 60, 70 million. Then he invested all of it in a new business and had to borrow money from his friend to pay rent. You hear these crazy stories, but what they go off is their own instinct. They go off their intuition. They play the game with uncertainty so fearlessly, recognizing uncertainty is the norm. We don't have certainty. Uncertainty is the norm. So there's a great question that's come in. Although uncertainty is the norm, there must come a time when you need to pull the plug on an idea. How do you know when to persist or move on? Now, I'm going to say something that's going to sound really rubbish in a second. It might sound rubbish. It might sound a little bit, but it's almost going off your instinct and gut. Like, you can use any model. You can use any framework. You can look up what are the pros, what are the cons. What would happen if and you can ask some great coaching questions. Like, here's a couple of coaching questions for you. Well, what would the impact be if you were to persist? What would the impact be if you were to move on right now from what you see? But at the end of the day, if you look at how we make decisions based off what feels right to us, what makes the most sense to us. Like, regardless of the data, regardless of the information, it's seeing where we make decisions from. And in this case, there's no harm in pulling a plug on an idea, because that will lead you to the next thing. That will lead you to the next thing. There's no harm in seeing, well, if I were to persist, great, could this lead me on? Because I've persisted through tough times and it's paid dividends. I've given up on ideas and it's paid dividends. But there's two ways to look at it. One, going off your own instinct, because there will be experts that will say this. There will be experts that will say that. At the end of the day, and this is just my view, look, expertise is great, but you've got to look at what your own instincts are telling you, because that's what's going to make the difference. That's how your best decisions have come from. Like, you can have someone who's the leading expert in your industry and give you this advice. It could go wrong. It may not even be what you want to do, in line with your values, in line with what you want to achieve in your life. But right now, a question I'd put to you, and this is a bit more of a sharper question that I ask some clients when they're stuck with a decision. I'd say, if someone were to put a gun next to your head right now and say, you got to make a decision, what would you say? And why I'm curious to what comes up isn't so much about, okay, great, you've got an answer, but it's coming back to your own intuition. What is it telling you? Are you saying, or are you feeling that you should persist? Are you feeling that you should move on? And if right now you're not sure, that in itself isn't such a bad thing. And I'll speak to that in 1 second before I go on to the next point. And great questions, guys. Keep sending them through. Great question. People also think, well, I don't know what I need to do right now. That's a bad thing. I need to have certainty. I need to have clarity, I think they call it. People are big on clarity these days. I need to know exactly what I need to do right now. Well, this is what, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, as a high performance coach, I don't always have clarity. I don't always have an idea of what I'm going to do next. Like right now I do. But just 2 weeks ago, I made a major decision about changing the direction of where I'm going with my coaching. Now, I had no idea about that months ago, and I was going through uncertainty. But what happens is, coming back to the uncertain mindset, is when we allow ourselves to feel a bit uncertain and feel a bit more comfortable in the uncertainty, what then happens is we make better decisions, and it's easier to get clarity when we're relaxed, like when we slow down. Like a question I ask my clients is, where do you get your best ideas from? And I ask you all to think about this for a second. Where do you get your best ideas from? And all of them tell me in the shower or when I'm walking my dog. Ask yourself why that is. Because how we get a sense for what decision we need to make will come through faster when we're relaxing a bit more. When we don't put the pressure on ourselves, when we're not looking at uncertainty being bad or uncertainty being good, and we work with the times, what happens is we eventually get clarity. So right now, if you're looking at the decision of, do I pull a plug? Do I move on? What I'd say is, look at what your instincts are telling you right now. And just sit with it, because what will happen is in the next day, 2 days, you'll know what you need to do. And if anything, I'm going to challenge this one more thing about this, guys. Most people, when I have a client who comes to me and says, Rag, I don't know what I want to do next. Most often they know what they want to do next, but they're scared about what would happen if they did it. That's the difference. I wonder if that's also the case with your question. Like, yeah, Rag, well, okay, what would I do if I couldn't fail? I'll do this, but I'm really scared if I did this, I would fail. And you see, this is where the fear of uncertainty comes from. That because we think we should know how things are going to pan out, we often don't do things. When the requirement is you don't always need to see the way ahead. You need to go off what makes the most sense to you now. And that's how we get in the way of us making decisions. And this might not be the case with you. 95% of people I'd coach, I think deep down know where they want to go, but they're saying that I'm really worried I'm going to fail. What if I look like a fraud? Or some clients have been coaching around imposter syndrome. They've been saying, what if I'm an imposter? What if? And you see, guys, if you're saying what if, what you're doing is you're being really caught up in what might happen in the future, or you're being really fearful about what could unfold, when in actual fact, there's nothing that will tell us that will happen. And if things start going pear-shaped, then ask yourself, would you not be able to deal with it in the moment? Would you not be able to look at it in the moment with common sense and think, okay, how can I best juggle this right now? Because the what-ifing is not surfing a wave that's in front of us. We're trying to surf a wave that we think might or might not come. And the problem is you can't surf waves like that. You can only work with what's in front of you. So that's what would bring you back to with your question. So what if, number one, you did know? And is there anything there that's having you say, well, if I did this, I would fail. If I did this, and that's how as entrepreneurs, we hold ourselves back during these times. Like, oh, it's so uncertain. Then I couldn't do this because it's so uncertain. Well, no, because it's so uncertain, if this does feel like the right thing for you to do, what would one step be? What about just taking one step? And as we take one step, it builds momentum, which brings me into the second point for today's conversation. So number one was embracing uncertainty. And number two was the power of focus, the power of essentialism. And that's essentialism, 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 by Greg McKeown. It's a great understanding, great conversation. And what he talks about is that today, so many of us are overwhelmed with priorities. So many of us today are overwhelmed with all these things we think we need to do. And the truth behind it is that when you look at what priorities means, and when you break it down, he says that people should have a priority, not priorities. That people would go into meetings and say, here's my journal, right? Here are my top 7 priorities. And that doesn't make sense. Because when we overload ourselves, we struggle to perform. We struggle to navigate uncertainty. It's coming back to that shower example. Where do you get your best ideas from? Well, usually times that you're not overloading yourself. Usually times you're not stressing yourself out. Usually times that you're not working yourself up. So what essentialism is about is looking at whatever you're working on right now and asking yourself what is essential. What right now is essential? Because we're taking on all these tasks. We have such big to-do lists today. I used to be this guy. I'm going to get 10 things done today. Right now, all I care about is getting 2 or 3 things done that are really going to move the needle. You might call that Pareto efficiency, the 20% that creates the 80%. Because when we look at what's really critical, and by the way, most of us don't do that. We think things are important, when in actual fact, if you take your big to-do list and you boil it down to the essentials, you'll find maybe 1 or 2 things that are really clear cut. And everything else is just maybes. The things that are really going to make a difference. So in this time, to navigate this time that we're in, to achieve high performance, it's about having focus, but focus on what's essential. And it's similar to the question I was asked, how do you know when to pull the plug? Well, look at what's essential right now. Get really clear about what are the priorities, what's really essential. And through that, you're going to be able to take the next step and the next step. There's a great story about this CEO, a Fortune 500 CEO. And I actually shared the story on LinkedIn just a few days ago. And the story goes that the CEO is known to have such a busy lifestyle, almost like a presidential lifestyle, where he has to wake up at 6 a.m. He goes into the office, has meetings, and then he almost has to jump on a jet here and there through the week to go back and forth to different branches of the organization, and etc. And he's so busy. And someone once looked at his schedule and said, "Oh my gosh, you're booked up from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. How are you doing this?" And on some days, yeah, you have time with your family. How do you take time off with your family? How do you play golf? How do you do these things? How? And the guy said, "I just do one thing at a time." The guy said, "I do one thing at a time." And this is what I do. That I actually myself, I don't believe in the concept of hard work. I can work 14-hour days. It doesn't feel hard. I can work 1 hour and that can feel really stressful because of how I'm showing up and who I'm being. Rajesh, great question. I'm going to come to you, by the way. It's about who you're being. I can work 12-hour days, 13-hour days, and it can feel easy. It can feel flow. It can feel harmonious. Time can fly if I'm focused on one thing at a time. And I get into the zone like an athlete, like a high performer, like a footballer. And I just go all in onto the one thing right now. And then when that's done, great. What's the next one thing? Minimizing distraction. Because as Tim Galloway says, it's performance equals potential minus interference. Performance equals potential minus interference, meaning that we have an incredible potential. When we're not getting in the way of our own potential by overloading ourselves with to-do lists, worrying about the future, getting very stressed out about what will or what won't happen. When we ignore all of that, we get rid of the comparing ourselves to other people. We get rid of the self-criticism. We get rid of the speaking badly to yourself. Suddenly, when you just show up empty, you start performing with more of your potential. You're able to give your work more. You're not overloaded with all this stuff, all this thought, and your own natural performance will come through. Like, I think performance isn't something you have to create. I think we're all naturally high performers wherever we want to go and be. We just get in our own way. So what this is about is getting out of our own way so our own inbuilt ability can come through. All the hard work, all the training, everything we've done, that can come through if we get out of our own way. So to tackle Rajesh's question, I'm glad you like the content. Thank you for the kind words. How do I attract my first client without a track record? And how do I stand out from other coaches and consultants out there? So I'll give you my 2 cents, and this might be a little bit controversial and different to what's out there, but this is what I do. I don't look to stand out from other coaches. I look to play a game that no other coaches are playing. And what that means is any client that I ever work with, I want to create such an experience that blows their mind. Like the first thing is my passion is customer experience. It's the one thing I love about business. And I see so many businesses that don't value their customer. They treat the customer like crap. The most expensive cost is acquisition, not retention. So I want to go all in on retention and have clients renew with me. So the first is I look at my process and I see, if I was to buy this, what would blow my mind? How can I create an experience for my clients like no other coach is ever going to create? And that can be small things. Like I check in with my clients. I send them handwritten letters on really nice envelopes and acknowledge them for the work we've done. I acknowledge them for their breakthroughs. Or when we've had a tricky session and they've been vulnerable, I share a message with them and I say, I'm so inspired by you, to doing meaningful gestures, like gifting your clients things. Like spontaneously, I send my clients books and journals with their name on it, like embossed, and all these little things that link to the work we're doing. I want to create an experience where my clients feel I'm not just being coached, that this guy is impacting everything I'm doing. But the second thing, and this is the key thing, you don't need a track record. It's this whole thing of, oh, to do this job, you need experience. But I'm a grad, I haven't got experience. So how can I get, you see, it's a conundrum. So instead, rather than doing all this stuff, what I do is I coach people one conversation at a time. It comes back to the one thing. What I do is when I come across somebody who could benefit from the work I do, I invite them into a coaching experience. And I don't sell coaching. I don't talk figures. I will not let anyone buy coaching from me until I've coached them for at least 2 sessions for up to 2 hours long. So how I attract clients is if I came across somebody who said, Rag, I'm struggling with this. I say, well, okay. And I hear about it. I say, well, would you like to have a coaching conversation? Would you like to talk about it? Would you like some help with that? I'd love to put some time aside where we can brainstorm some ideas and strategies. And I invite them into a conversation with me. And I just give them 2 hours like they're a client of mine. I serve them as powerfully as I can, like they've paid me £1 million. And then when we're finished, I invite them to another conversation if I'm inspired by what we've done. And by the end of that, if they really like the coaching that's been impactful, they'll say, how do you work? How do you charge? And I never have to sell coaching. I let the coaching sell itself. Now, it's a very different model from people that'll say, oh, but it's not scalable. It's not this. If you can start doing this organically and you build an organic business, then you can do all the other stuff. But at least some of the lead gen has to be organic. So the way you do organic is just being of value. Asking yourself this question. This is the one question I ask myself every day. Who can I serve today? Who could I give a coaching conversation to? Who could I invite into my world and create an impact in their life? Who's that one person? And then I reach out to them and say, hey, Steve, it's been a while. I was thinking about something you shared with me once, and I thought you'd enjoy this video. It's really powerful and speaks to one of the challenges you mentioned. How are things? And I'll build a dialogue. And they'll say, Rag, this is great. I was thinking about you. I'd love to have a conversation with you one day about your coaching. Great, I'll invite them in. Or Rag, I'm really struggling with this. This video was so perfectly timed. Thank you. I'm struggling with stress and I'm really overwhelmed with my business right now, and I'm not sure how to create clients. Well, okay, Steve, would it make sense if we put a couple hours aside or some time aside? Would you like to have a conversation about it? And that's the way I play. So I hope that makes sense, Rajesh. And this might apply to a number of other businesses that in today's day and age, it can be so easy to try and just get onto the sales wagon and sell. And by the way, guys, we've got 4 more minutes, I believe. So any other questions, fire them through before we wrap up. But it can be so easy to try and make a quick buck and try and create as many clients as we can. But what this is about is applying the 2 principles I've shared today, which is embracing uncertainty. Number 2, focus, essentialism. What's really important? And Rajesh, my advice, like if I can give you some unsolicited advice, is, and I've heard I'm doing fine for time, so please do tell me how much I've got left, because I can speak for London, England, whatever country you can think of. I can speak for the whole country. Only if there's an award for that, right? Only if there's an award. I'd be a multi-award winning coach. But how I look at it is my one thing every day is, who can I serve? That's all I need to do as a coach. And my goal, by the way, look, I'm just going to put this out there. I build my business organically. I want to have a practice where I only coach word of mouth and by referral only. And I know some people that are really good with the marketing side of it and having Google ads and Facebook ads and all that stuff. Look, it's not quite my jam. For me, I just like coaching and I want to build a business where people are raving fans and they're referring me to other people. And that's how I'm going to build my practice. To do that, it takes time. And I think it takes time in any business. But wherever your success will come from, it's being focused, being an essentialist. It doesn't matter if you want to use SEO, PPC, Google Ads, all these things in your business. It doesn't matter if you want to do it the way I'm doing it. What's important is looking at what's essential right now. And if you want to create clients, and if you're starting a business and you haven't created clients, you can get a website, you can do all the business cards. But often what's going to move the needle is by putting you in conversation, being in conversation with somebody else, being of service to your ideal clients, reaching out, being thoughtful, going above and beyond what anybody else would do. Because there's so many people, guys, out there, like you've seen this on LinkedIn. I get bombarded by 3 people, 4 people, 5 people every day who add me on LinkedIn, send me a sales pitch, right? We've been there, we've done that. I've had people cold call me, and I don't mind cold calls, but not even in the right way, like a little bit aggressive, a little bit rude, a little bit thoughtless. You can do it that way, or you can slow it down and think of just one person right now that you can impact, and the next person, and the next person. And as you go along, what you'll realize is you don't need that many people if you start with your inner circle, if you start with your network on Facebook, etc. But it's about being an essentialist, about being very on point to what's really important right now. What are my 1 thing, my 2 things, my 3 things? So let's say if you're starting a business and you want to create more clients, number 1 has got to be creating clients. The first thing you do every day, and the bulk of your activity should be creating clients, serving clients. Especially as a coach, those are the 2 things. Creating clients, serving clients. Everything else on top is the bonus. But those are the 2 things I look to do every day. So I hope that helps. So any other questions, guys, please fire them through. But to summarize what we've done today, point 1 is the mindset for uncertainty, which is embracing certainty. Uncertainty is not ever about having certainty. As one of my friends and mentors, Rich Lippin, talks about, he says that certainty is overrated. I remember this actually, he spoke at a seminar once, and I loved how he said this. He said, certainty is overrated. You don't need certainty looking forwards. You've always had it looking backwards. Just think about what that quote means to you. It reminds me of the Steve Jobs quote I'll talk about shortly, but it's just meaning that if you look back through your life, you'll realize that you've always made decisions despite certainty. Despite the unknown, you've always made decisions. Number 2 is the power of focus and essentialism. Being very focused on what's essential. Being very focused on what's important. Because when you throw yourself into the present, when you throw yourself into what's important, you naturally start performing a little bit better. You're a lot more clear. You're a lot more laser focused. Like imagine if you're in the military, you need to take a shot, right? You're in the army, you need to take a shot. Your mind's not going to be on, okay, well, I'm going to line this up, but what's for dinner? I hope they're doing sandwiches today with chips. Or, I had an argument with my wife, but I think she's wrong. Let me go and tell her she's wrong, because that always helps in a relationship, right? Telling the other half you're wrong. Like they're not there. Mentally, they're not there. Where they are is very clear, very laser focused, very present. And then whatever's in front of them, they can give maximum impact. Maximum impact. Good question. So what book of mindset has had the biggest impact on me? Now, as much as I might want to say, like, I think there's something called Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is ironically about mindset. But one of my favorite reads lately, it's really profound. Often my clients have read it and it's the second time they get the insight, the best insight. But it's called The Inside Out Revolution by Michael Neal. The Inside Out Revolution by Michael Neal. And let me see if do I have a copy here so I can pull up and show you somewhere? No, I did. It's gone for a walk. Books in my house seem to somehow just go for a walk. I don't know how they do it. It's not me, they've got legs. But it's the Inside Out Revolution by a guy called Michael Neal. And what I like about it is that it's not so much about mindset. Ironically, it's mindset without talking about mindset. What I mean by that, and why I've taken a step back from mindset, is most people think it's about how you think. It's about changing the way you think. Well, here's the downside to it. A lot of the challenges we have in our life and how we then change our mindset, the mindset is often the antidote. We use mindset today as an antidote. Like, example is if someone had a bleeding nose, and we think, okay, let me give them mindset. The mindset here would be, let me give you some tissues. What we don't ask is, why have you got a bleeding nose? Oh, well, I'm running into a wall. Give me some more tissues. As a coach, I want to say, well, hang on, why are you doing that in the first place? Like, often what our challenges are that we experience are self-created, and then we use mindset as a way to fix it. So we're constantly looking for antidotes. And that's why business is stressful. That's why business is so overwhelming. That's what for some people, relationships, that, it's like we're putting a hand on the fire, then thinking, oh gosh, like it's hot. I burnt myself. Let me give myself cream now. And then we do it again and again and again. And that's what mindset does. Mindset to help with stress and overwhelm is fixing a problem that you've created, is fixing an experience you've created. So that's why I like this book, The Inside Out Revolution, because it talks about, where does experience come from? Where does our stress come from? And when you understand that, then you naturally perform better in a lot of your life. I used to think, and we've had, in the comment, I've read that great book. It's an extraordinary book, because I used to think mindset is, okay, I need to think this, I need to be this. And I used to show up like this sort of Power Ranger, until I realized that actually a lot of performance is inbuilt. A lot of our performance is innate, and we get in the way of our performance through overthinking, overwhelm, stressing, worrying, self-doubt. That when we're not doing a lot of that, we tend to perform a lot better. When we take that way, we tend to have a bigger impact. We do better in life. We do better in business. We feel lighter. We feel more clean, more present, more focused, more in tune with what's essential in our business. Great. So I've got a couple of minutes, guys. Any other questions? So literally 2 minutes left. Any other questions, please fire them through. But ladies and gents, from my side, it's been a real pleasure to do today's keynote. I hope it's been of value. I hope it's been more than, crazy guy on the other side of the screen ranting and raving about some stuff. I hope today was really useful for you all. And unless there's any other questions, I'll kind of wait till we wrap up. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit, the Startup Scale-Up Summit, and what Ketan's organized. He's a legend. He's someone I'm really inspired by. He's a friend. He's a colleague. He's someone in the industry that, I think is doing some incredible work, and I'm really privileged to call a friend. So keep, enjoying the summit, guys, and soak it up. What he's done is phenomenal. And, I'm looking forward to hearing more of the speakers myself. But it's been a pleasure, ladies and gents. Thanks for tuning in, and all the best for the year ahead.